And with Alabama's December 12th special election for Senator Jeff Sessions' former seat less than a month away, what are the remaining options for the Republican Party? And what's the view from the ground? Joining me now, two perfect people to provide insights. Alabama's Secretary of State John Merrill and former Alabama GOP Chair Marty Connors. Mr. Secretary, let me begin with you. I want to game it out. Election day is 12/12, but people are already voting by absentee, so there's no chance Roy Moore's name comes off that ballot in any scenario, right?
No, sir. Michael, our state law would have indicated that after the names had been confirmed by the state party on October the 11th, that when the ballots were printed and were begun distribution on October the 18th, within that 76-day window, there's absolutely no way that the ballot can be changed. A candidate cannot be substituted for or removed from the ballot at that time.
You could have a write-in candidate. Has anyone, as far as you know, Mr. Secretary, won in Alabama statewide as a write-in candidate?
No, sir. To our knowledge, we cannot find any indication of any candidate that's ever won statewide. We've had regional elections where write-in candidates have been successful, local county races, legislative races where that has occurred, but not at the statewide level. We have had a lot of information introduced to us about people who have an interest in write-ins. One of the things that we will do at the polls on Election Day to make the process a lot simpler for our voters is we will have an information sheet, an instructional sheet that will be available for their review, that will also be on our website they can download prior to their arrival at the polls, but it will give them instructions on what they need to do if they wish to write in a candidate of their choice other than the two that will appear on the ballot.
All right, number 3 on my list. Does Governor Kay Ivey have the opportunity to postpone this election, and if so, on what basis?
Well, a governmental proclamation from Governor Ivey can establish a date for a special election. That's not going to happen in this particular instance, and primarily because people are already voting. Voting has been underway for our UOCAVA military overseas voters, for regular absentee voters that wish to participate. And so those hundreds of ballots that have already been cast in all 67 counties are out there, and I know the governor does not want to interrupt that process by delaying the vote that will occur in 24 days.
All right, here's scenario number 4, and thank you for being so concise in your assessment. Let's say that Judge Moore is elected to the U.S. Senate. He gets to the Senate and is expelled by a 2/3 vote. You folks in Alabama still need to fill that seat, even if there's a temporary replacement. Could Judge Moore then come back and run in whatever the next election might be?
Well, certainly. I don't see anything that would disqualify him legally from being able to do that. I do find that scenario highly unlikely, but the rules of the Senate would actually govern the seating of a new member, and the governance of the Senate overall would determine that individual's ability to serve.
Mr. Secretary, I really appreciate your being here to clear up some discrepancies.
Michael, thank you for having me as your guest this morning.
Now to former Alabama GOP Chair Marty Connors. Mr. Connors, the latest poll from Fox News shows that Judge Moore is now behind his Democratic opponent, Doug Jones, by 8 points. Does that comport with your gut feel from the ground?
Not even closely. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't trust any poll right now. Not even closely. First of all, I think the samples included way too many Democrats. If any poll, I just don't believe any polls right now. The ground is totally fluid.
So I was wondering if perhaps the polling data might reflect a reverse Bradley effect, if you follow me here, that if a pollster calls a home in Alabama, maybe the person is for Judge Moore. Maybe they're half of the vote there is evangelical Christian. But you're not going to tell some stranger on the phone because it is suddenly so out of step to say I'm for Judge. So you lie.
Well, I saw that firsthand when I was going door to door in the northern neighborhoods of Cincinnati, Ohio. People who were voting for Trump This was the same weekend, by the way, the video came out. People who were voting for Trump just didn't really want to say it for multiple reasons, but I guess some of it is they don't want somebody showing up at their door, and they don't know, what's going to happen next. They don't want to get labeled. I mean, right now, you can get labeled for these kind of things, and people don't like that. So that's why I don't trust any polling whatsoever right now.
Is it fair to say that the more folks from outside Alabama tell Alabama what they should do, they're probably benefiting Judge Moore? That Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, whomever it might be, what side of the it doesn't matter, but you're going to bristle. I think I'd bristle at outsiders telling me how to vote in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much true across the South and the Western states in general. I mean, just let us choose our own, and we really don't need to adjudicate this in the Washington Post or CNN. I understand you have to do your job, and you're doing a good job, but this is for Alabama to decide, and ultimately we think that the people and not the media is the best jury.
People forget, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Judge Moore, when running successfully in that 2012 race for Chief Justice, only won by 4 points. I mean, he's never been rock solid. Is that true?
That's not true either, because it goes back to your turnout models. He also enjoyed what was it? Obama was running, was it? Yeah.
Right.
So you had tremendous African American turnout, where you will have it this time, but I don't know that you will have the same money on the ground this time as the Obama machine did.
If Judge Moore should be successful, this is a problem for the national GOP insofar as in 2018, every Democrat will link their opponent to Judge Roy Moore. He will essentially become the running mate for every Democrat running anywhere.
I would agree with that, and I don't know that it will work, though. I mean, keep in mind that conservatives and rural voters, traditional voters, and evangelicals are not limited to the state lines of the state of Alabama.
Okay, so you're there and you've got the credentials. Where's this thing headed?
Well, I tell you, the reason I don't know exactly where it's headed, I'll tell you what the strategy is. And let's just take the whole issue of the accusers aside and just talk about the horse race. I think from a Democratic perspective, what they're trying to do is to create enough confusion where they suppress, let's say, suburban Republican voters. In other words, I'm just not going to vote. And that's, I think, what they're hoping to do. That's the part I cannot predict. So if you wanted to do a real poll, I would try to get maybe a focus group looking at Republican voters about this issue. And the question is, will some of them stay home?
But I understand you're giving me a political answer, but you don't expect that voters could keep out of their mind all that investigative reporting from the Post. I mean, whatever the source may have been, a broken clock is right twice a day. You got to look at all the detail in those tales, right? And say,
right.
Something here.
Well, that's true. This is also a 4-decade-old just breaking story. It's not like there's an actual piece of hard evidence, and some of the evidence already has been proven questionable as you pull back the skin of the onion. But no, I'm not giving you a political answer. I'm giving you an honest political science answer, and that is, the question is, what will suburban voters do? Republican, will they vote for the continuation of tax reform or the removal of Obamacare? Will they vote for a continuation of a conservative Supreme Court, or will they sit at home? And that's the question I've yet to come up with an answer for.
Yeah, my hunch is that perhaps they should, but none of those things are going to matter as much as the allegations that have been leveled against them. You can have the final word.
I would think just the opposite. I think a lot of people are going to go to the polls and say, I don't like this, I'm confused about this, but I haven't made a conclusion, therefore I'm going to vote to maintain control of the Senate and a conservative Supreme Court. Remember, Kennedy could be up for appointment or replacement here very, very soon.
I know. It just seems kind of odd, though, that we should be allegations because we want him to make a determination as to who should be on the Supreme Court of the United States. There's something not right there.
No. Didn't say that we would have him make that decision. We would say it would be a Republican and a conservative majority make that decision, as opposed to a guaranteed liberal majority.
Marty Connors, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Let's see what you're saying on my Twitter and Facebook pages. What do you have, Catherine? Franken making a bad joke isn't the same as Moore trapping a teenager in his car. Kerry, Naomi Wolf's point, you know, it's an unlawful act if, in fact, he forced himself upon her. I understand the distinction. I think they need to all be dealt with consistency. I'm not saying they're all the same in their factual assertions, but they need to be looked at the same way and not through a partisan lens. Another one? Do we have time? Sure. Let's see. God has forgiven Judge Moore, and he will forgive those who vote for him. Grackle, I wish I could see your face as you're typing that. Like, are you serious? Still to come this week, House